I used to work security overnight at an office complex on the outskirts of Portland. It was a 4-story building that housed small private firms, law offices, insurance brokers, a real estate agency or two. Nothing exciting, just cold, gray corridors, vending machines that sometimes worked, and that heavy silence only fluorescent lights seemed to hum through at 2 a.m. There were 2 of us on shift, me and a guy named Jeremy. We rotated floors. One of us stayed in the surveillance room, what we called the fishbowl, watching the dozen or so security feeds. The other did patrols every hour. Quiet job, easy pay. Most nights were empty and uneventful, and we liked it that way. Until that Wednesday, I was on patrol first. I remember because it had just started to rain, and I'd been complaining about tracking muddy prints through the stairwells. Around 1:20 a.m., I was coming down from the 3rd floor when Jeremy radioed me. "Hey, you catch that guy coming in?" "Just now." I stopped on the landing. "What guy?" "Came in the front door. Tall black coat, didn't badge in." "No one's come in on my end." "You sure?" "Saw him on cam 1 front lobby. Walked straight past the desk." "You should have crossed him on the 2nd floor if he took the stairs." I swept the 3rd floor again. Nothing. Back to the 2nd. Empty. I checked the restrooms, the copy room, even the janitor's closet. Nothing but stale air and buzzing lights. I headed back down and met Jeremy in the fishbowl. He rewound the camera. There he was, a man in a long dark coat, stepping into the frame from the front doors. He never looked at the camera, just moved. Through the lobby, slowly, like he'd walked that path before. His face was turned away just enough that I couldn't get a read on him. He disappeared off screen toward the elevators. That was it. "You didn't see him go up?" I asked. "Nope. No elevator activity. No other cameras picked him up. Maybe he dipped into a stairwell." We checked. All 5 stairwell cams showed nothing, no doors opening, no movement. Just empty concrete dot. Jeremy frowned. "Check cam 12 again." That one covered the hallway right outside the lobby leading to 2 empty offices and the janitor's room. We rewound. This time, something chilled me. We watched the man walk into the frame dot, then we watched nothing. He didn't come out. He never returned to the frame. No doors opened. No movement. He had vanished in less than 40 feet of hallway. The next day, we pulled a full playback of every feed. It took hours, but it confirmed what we saw. The man had entered. He had not exited. No badge scan. No stairs used. No elevator use. And the hallway camera cam 12 showed him enter and simply never leave. The offices in that hallway had been locked, their doors sealed with motion alarms. None of them tripped. The janitor's closet. It hadn't been opened in days. "Maybe it glitched," Jeremy said, though he didn't sound convinced. "Maybe," I replied. But I was already double-checking the motion logs. That was the first night. 3 nights later, I was alone. Jeremy had called out sick. The rain had returned. I was in the fishbowl just past 2:15 when I heard it. A soft knock, not from the surveillance room door, not from any of the cameras, but from behind me. From within the room, it was unmistakable. A gentle but deliberate knock, like knuckles on glass. I turned. There was no one in the room, just rows of monitors and the sound of rain on the window. I turned back to the screen and froze. The lobby feed. Cam 1 was dark, static. I clicked it, tapped the console, toggled the feed. Nothing, just the jittering gray snow. Then, another feed, flickered cam 12, the hallway, and then, him. He was standing in the exact same spot he had vanished from that first night, facing the camera this time, his face. God, it looked wrong. Like a mannequin sculpted just slightly off from human. Too symmetrical, mouth too small, skin too smooth. It didn't move, didn't blink. Just looked at the camera, and then the knocking came again, not in the room, from the hallway. Cam 12 showed him staring still, but the knocking came from inside the hallway itself, 3 sharp knocks, echoing through the otherwise silent feed. I muted the audio. The knocking stopped. I stared at the screen for a long minute. Then, as if bored of being watched, the man turned and walked off camera. I sprinted to the hallway, my flashlight barely catching up with my steps. Nothing. No man, no footprints, just the long, sterile corridor and the humming of the vending machine around the corner. We brought it to management the next day. The footage, the audio, everything. They dismissed it as corrupted. Video files and paranoid night shifts. But they replaced the camera, rewired the hallway. For a while, things settled down until 2 weeks later, when Jeremy didn't show up. They called me first. He hadn't called out, hadn't clocked in, hadn't been home. His car was still in the lot when I arrived, and on the console in the fishbowl. The security feed was paused at 3:13 a.m. Cam 12, the hallway. There he was again, standing, still, silent, and beside him, Jeremy frozen, like he was his flashlight dimly glowing on the floor. Then the feed cut to black. That was the last anyone saw of him. I quit that week. I don't care what anyone says. That man in the coatee doesn't walk. He waits. He waits in places people forget to. Check hallways, corners, glitches between camera frames, the silence between footfalls, and when you see him, it's already too late. They never found Jeremy. They never found anything at all. Just a hallway with no doors, and a knock that no one answers. I used to work for a real estate firm that handled foreclosed properties, homes seized after their owners defaulted or disappeared, often in strange, sudden circumstances. My job was simple: conduct preliminary walkthroughs and catalog anything of value left behind before cleanup crews arrived. It paid well enough, especially for someone like McWyatt, detail-oriented and fine with solitude. This happened in late 2019. We had just acquired a small property in eastern Ohio, a modest 2-story home, weathered siding, cracked porch, and overgrown lawn. The owner, an elderly man named Vernon Halbert, had vanished in early November. No relatives, no will. He had been reported missing by a Meals on Wheels volunteer. The police found the house locked from the inside, food rotting on the kitchen counter, a pot of water boiled dry on the stove. His wallet, keys, and shoes were still by the door, but Vernon was gone. No sign of forced entry, no sign of a struggle, just gone. I was dispatched to inspect the property 3 weeks later. The first thing I noticed when I arrived was the silence. Not just quiet, but hollow. There was no wind, no birds, no passing cars, just the crunch of frost under my boots as I crossed the yard. The porch creaked in that cartoonishly cliched way that made me smirk. Just briefly. Inside, the house smelled of must and something slightly metallic like cold pennies. The heat hadn't been on in weeks. My breath puffed in small clouds as I opened the door and stepped in. The living room was neat but old. Faded floral wallpaper, worn carpet, a recliner positioned just a little too close to an old tube TV. That's when I heard it. A soft clicking sound. I followed it to the corner of the room, where an old VCR sat beneath the television. A red light glowed faintly on its front. It was already playing. The screen buzzed for a moment before fading in. It was static at first, grainy and gray, but then shapes emerged. A dimly lit hallway, long, narrow, no sound, just the mechanical hum of the tape playing. I assumed it was some home movie or security footage. Maybe something Vernon had been watching before he disappeared. The timestamp at the bottom flickered oddly, like the numbers were glitching, never settling. I should have turned it off right then, but I didn't. The camera on the tape slowly moved down the hallway. No narration, no dialogue, no audio at all. Just the slow glide toward a closed wooden door at the end of the hall. The footage felt wrong, Not disturbing at first, just off, like the perspective wasn't handheld or mounted. It moved too smoothly, like the hallway itself was drawing the lens inward. I noticed something else. The hallway on the screen didn't match the house I was standing in. It was far too long, far too narrow. The wallpaper was different, peeling wet. The tape continued. The door at the end creaked open. Darkness. The camera pushed in, then static, and then a shot of the living room. This living room, same recliner, same carpet, but the lights were off, and someone was sitting in the chair. I leaned closer to the screen. The figure was barely visible, just a silhouette, head slightly turned toward the camera. But the face was blurred, not pixelated, not smeared. It was as though the camera refused to focus on it. The distortion shimmered subtly, like heat waves rising from asphalt. I paused the tape. Silence. I stood there for a long time, staring at the frozen image of the room I was standing in, only one frame removed. Then I heard a sound from the second floor, a thud, then a dragging sound, slow, heavy. I backed away from the TV, every hair on my neck standing. Logic told me it was just the old house settling, a raccoon maybe, or something falling over, but something deeper, older, more instinctive, told me to leave, immediately. I didn't listen. I climbed the stairs slowly, flashlight raised. The dragging sound had stopped. The upper hallway was dim, windows covered with old, yellowed curtains. The carpet muffled my steps. 3 doors, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. I checked the bathroom first, empty, then the smaller bedroom, dusty, disused, with boxes and an old sewing machine. Then the master. The door creaked as I pushed it open, empty, until I turned around. There was a mirror behind the door. Tall, cracked, its edges warped, and in that mirror, the hallway behind me stretched far too long, just like the hallway in the video, much longer than it was in reality. And something moved in that reflection. At the far end, a figure, tall, still, watching. I turned around fast. Nothing there. When I looked back at the mirror, it was gone. Just a reflection of the normal hallway. No extended corridor, no figure. I went back downstairs, feeling sick. I ejected the tape from the VCR. It was unlabeled, the plastic casing slightly warm to the touch. I pocketed it, intending to bring it back to the office before I could leave. I noticed something else on the coffee table, a stack of notebooks. Most were blank, but one, near the bottom, had writing, scrawled in tight, frantic handwriting. The first page read, "It doesn't knock, it doesn't ask, it plays the tape, and then it waits." Another page said, "It shows you the hallway, then it shows you yourself. You're never the same after." The final page was short, just one sentence. I saw myself watching the tape. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept the tape on my desk unmarked, accusing I didn't dare watch it again. I should have destroyed it, burned it, but something kept me from it, curiosity, maybe, or fear that I had to know more. The next morning I went to work early, told my supervisor about the house, the tape, the writing. He just laughed. "Old folks leave weird stuff behind all the time," he said. He told me to log the tape and move on. But when I went to retrieve it from my desk, it was gone. I never told anyone that part, but I know it was there. And a week later, another employee was sent to that same house. He didn't show up for work again, vanished. His car was found, idling in the driveway. The front door was open. The TV was playing. They condemned the property a month later. Mold issues, they said. Too far gone for sale. But I never forgot that tape. And sometimes, late at night, when I pass old electronics at a thrift store or see a flicker of static on an old screen, I wonder how many others have watched it. How many saw themselves in a hallway that shouldn't exist. And how many never came back. I was 19 when I lost my best friend, Aaron. Not in the tragic, final way that usually ends these kinds of stories. No, Aaron disappeared, and nobody, not his family, not the police, not me, has ever been able to explain how we were roommates. In a tiny apartment near the community college we both attended. Cheap rent, bad plumbing, paper-thin walls. It was fine. We were broke and didn't care. What we did care about was hiking. We lived near a patch of woods that stretched for miles, a mix of state-owned and private land that blurred into forgotten trails, old deer paths, and thick, silent trees. Every weekend, we wandered somewhere new. Aaron had this old paper map he swore was better than any GPS. It shows paths they don't mark anymore, he used to say. Why wouldn't they mark them? I asked once. Because they don't want you to use them, he grinned. That grin, that cocky, always up to something smirk. It used to be annoying. Now I miss it more than anything. It was mid-October when it happened. The trees had turned to fire gold, red dying orange, and the air had that cold bite that hinted at the coming winter. We left early that Sunday. Aaron said he wanted to explore one of the off-map paths he'd found the week before. I was skeptical. Does it lead anywhere? That's the point, he replied. It doesn't have to. We hiked for hours. It started normal enough. Birds, breeze, damp earth, and leaf rot under our boots. But around midday, the forest got dark, weird, not darker, exactly, but quieter. No wind, no animal sounds, just our footsteps and breathing, and Aaron's voice getting more clipped, more focused, as he led us further in. Almost there, he muttered. Where's there? You'll see. We passed through a thicket of dead trees that felt wrong, as if they'd burned from the inside out. Aaron pushed ahead with more urgency. Then he stopped. Ahead was a trail I hadn't seen before, narrow, sunless. The dirt was darker than it should have been, like it had been soaked in something. Aaron grinned. Shortcut, he said. Shortcut. To what? I asked. Back he started walking, before I could respond. And that was the last time I saw him. I waited. I stood there for almost an hour, calling his name, circling the area. Nothing, no response, no footsteps. The trail he'd taken seemed to vanish 20 feet in. I tried to follow it, but after 20 or 30 steps, the path, just wasn't there anymore. I turned back, except I wasn't sure which direction back was. The trees had shifted, or maybe I had. Eventually, I found the thicket again, marked it with a broken branch. Then, I ran. I reached the trailhead by nightfall and drove straight to the police. They searched. 4 days. Helicopters, dogs, teams, nothing, no sign of him. They looked at me sideways, the way people do when the story doesn't add up. I was the last person to see him, and I didn't even have a clear explanation of what had happened. They never found the trail I described, never found that line of dead trees, never found Aaron. A month later, I went back alone. Stupid, I know, but I couldn't just leave it. I hiked the same trail, found the same area. No thicket, no burned trees, no strange path, but I did find something near. The base of an old tree, buried under a scattering of leaves, was Aaron's map, folded, stained, but intact. When I opened it, something was different. There was a new mark, one I hadn't seen before. A small circle deep in the woods, labeled with 2 words. Not yours. I brought the map to the police. They dismissed it as a prank, or my own mental projection. Grief does weird things, they said. But I know what I saw. And here's the thing, I've never told anyone. Some nights, I still get calls. Unknown number. No voice, just a low, shifting static. And if I listen closely, really listen, I swear, I can hear leaves crunching, like someone walking, moving further away. And once, just once, I heard my name, barely a whisper, but it was his voice. Shortcut. I moved into that building because it was quiet. Old, sure, but solid. Brick walls, heavy doors, thick floors. Built sometime in the 60s, before open layouts and paper-thin drywall became the norm. It was just me. A one-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor, near the corner of a horseshoe-shaped complex. A few elderly tenants, a couple in 2B who kept to themselves, and a guy in 4D who worked graveyard shifts and was never home. The apartment above my unit 4C was listed as unavailable. According to the building manager, it hadn't been rented out in nearly 8 years due to a structural issue. Something with the plumbing. Whatever. I was fine with the idea of no upstairs neighbor, at least. I wasn't, till I started hearing footsteps. They began about 2 weeks after I moved in. At first, I thought they were coming from the hallway, heavy, deliberate steps around midnight or later. But when I stood at my door to listen, the hall was silent. One night, I stayed up late reading, and I heard them again. This time, they were directly above me, slow, steady pacing, from one end of the ceiling to the other, then back again. I froze. I knew 4C was empty. I'd even peeked through the peephole once, when the door had been left open for repairs. Bare floor. No furniture, just exposed pipes and a patch of plaster torn from the wall. Still, the footsteps continued, and they got louder. I told the building manager, a woman named Marlene, who lived on the 1st floor. "You sure it wasn't the hallway?" she asked. "No, it was above me. Someone's walking around up there. No one's supposed to be in 4C. Then maybe someone broke in. Highly unlikely. That unit's sealed. No power, no water." She promised to check, but I could tell she didn't believe me. That night, the footsteps started again, closer this time. They weren't pacing anymore. They were following me. When I moved from my couch to the kitchen, they followed Dawn. When I walked to the bathroom, the steps mirrored mine. Always one floor above. Always just slightly out of sync. I stopped sleeping, started leaving the TV on at night, just to drown out the sound. One evening, I came home from work and found something odd. A wet stain on my ceiling, directly above my bed. A slow, dark circle, growing outward, like an ink blot. It hadn't been there that morning. I called Marlene again. She came up, took one look, and frowned. "Old pipes probably shifted again," she muttered. "But you said there's no water running upstairs." "There shouldn't be. I'll send someone to check." That stain stayed there for days, then dried up completely. No water damage, no smell, just a faint, circular shadow where the ceiling had once wept, and the footsteps got worse. It wasn't pacing anymore. It was dragging like someone limping, or pulling something heavy. It would begin around 2:17 a.m. always the same time, every night, once. In a moment of desperation, I banged the ceiling with a broom. The footsteps stopped immediately. I sighed with relief, until a knock came. From inside my apartment, 3 slow raps. Not on the front door, not on the walls. From my bedroom closet. I didn't open it that night, or the next. By the 3rd week, I was unraveling. I tried sleeping elsewhere, friends' couches, hotel rooms, but the dreams followed me. Dreams of a figure crawling across a ceiling, of water dripping upward, of keys that didn't fit locks I used every day. I went back one afternoon to grab a few things, and that's when I saw it. A pair of wet footprints on the inside of my front door, leading away from it, as if someone had been standing there, listening, then turned and walked back into the apartment. I confronted Marlene again. "I want to see 4C. That's not possible." "Then call someone who can make it possible." She stared at me too long. Her usual tight smile slipped. Finally, she handed me a set of keys. "Don't say I never helped you." I climbed the stairs. The hallway was quiet. 4C stood there unassuming. Just another brown door with faded numbers. I unlocked it. Inside, the air was cold and damp. The room was empty. No furniture, No lights, but there were marks on the floor. Long, dark grooves, like something had been dragged across the boards again and again. The ceiling was warped in the center, as if bowed downward by weight, and in the back corner, a closet door stood ajar. I walked toward it. My heart thudded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Inside the closet, nailed to the back wall, was a square metal grate dot, a vent, and on the other side, directly through the wall, was the ceiling of my bedroom. The grate was stained dark, dripping, and embedded in the filth was a single fingerprint, pressed deep, fresh. I moved out the next day, didn't wait for my deposit, didn't return the keys. I don't know what lived or lives in 4C, but I do know this. That apartment was never listed on rental websites. The building's directory skipped from 4B to 4D, and on the day I moved out, when I looked back up at the 4th floor, there was someone in the window of 4C, standing perfectly still, watching me leave. I don't know if I believe in curses, but whatever happened on Lot 6, it's not natural, and nobody in our town likes talking about it. Back in the early 2000s, my family moved into a new housing development. Freshly built cul-de-sac, identical, beige homes, fenced backyards, and artificial turf lawns. We were one of the first families to move in. Ours was Lot 3. Behind us was a wooded stretch, untouched and overgrown. That was Lot 6. It had been cleared, then abandoned. No one ever told us why. The rumor among kids was that Lot 6 was cursed. Of course, that's what kids say about anything overgrown and weird. But there was something strange about it. The developers never built on it. It didn't appear on town blueprints, and it wasn't for sale. Not even once. At first it was just an empty plot, some rebar, foundation slabs, leftover bricks. Then things started happening. Girls began vanishing. The first was a girl named Natalie Ruiz, 10 years old. She'd been walking home from the bus stop one afternoon, just 2 blocks over. Never made it back. Search parties combed the woods, the roads, even empty properties. They found one of her shoes muddy, torn wedged beneath a broken pipe on Lot 6. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just that single shoe. Months passed. People moved on, as much as you can after something like that. Then, the next girl disappeared. Melissa Tran, age 12. She lived just 1 street down. She was last seen riding her bike toward the coal-D-sack. Her tire tracks were found, but they stopped cold at the edge of Lot 6, like someone had lifted her off the bike in a single motion, or like she just stopped existing. By the third girl, Sarah McKinley, the neighborhood changed. Parents began walking kids everywhere. No more unsupervised play. Security lights went up. Alarms, dogs, cameras. It didn't matter. Sarah vanished in broad daylight. She had been jumping rope on her driveway. Her mother went inside for exactly 3 minutes. When she came back, the rope was lying there, swinging gently on the concrete dot. Lot 6 was visible from their house. It always was. Eventually, people stopped building in our coal-D-sack. The lots beyond ours were never sold. It was like the land itself was resisting, pushing back. The grass on Lot 6 grew too fast. Wild vines strangled the chain-link fence. Every attempt to mow it failed. Blades would break. Engines would seize. One man who tried to clean it out suffered a massive heart attack right there on the property. He was 42. No history of illness. Then came the girl I knew, Emily Carson. She was in my grade, 11 years old. We weren't close, but I remember her laugh. She used to sit next to me in art class. Emily vanished one Friday night after a neighborhood birthday party. We'd all been playing hide-and-seek just a few doors down. She'd been it. We scattered. When we regrouped, she never came back. Her parents thought she ran home early. She hadn't. No. One saw her leave the yard. No one heard her call out. Her flashlight was found at the edge of Lot 6, still warm. The light was pointed into the trees. The police brought in drones, dogs, specialists, nothing. The development was practically shut down. News vans parked at every corner, and yet, not one person ever found a body, a piece of clothing, a sign of life. Lot 6 remained untouched. When we moved away 3 years later, it was still empty, still thick with vines and thorns, still silent. I'm 31 now. The old neighborhood came up in a group chat recently, and I got curious. I looked it up. There's still no home on Lot 6. Still no explanation, but I did find something odd buried in the comments of a forgotten forum thread about the area. Someone posted a single blurry photo. It shows the empty lot, with a crude concrete slab near the center. But if you zoom in, just beneath a torn blue tarp, you can barely make out what looks like a child's handprint, pressed into the concrete. Fresh, too small to be old construction, too clear to be accidental, and beside it, a name, etched in shaky letters. Emily. There's a stretch of highway in northern Arizona that most locals refuse to drive after midnight, not because of the wildlife, not because of the lack of lighting or the risk of breakdowns. They avoid it because of him, the man who walks the roadside in total silence. I didn't believe the stories until I saw him myself, and what I saw, what I heard in the days afterward, still messes with my head. I used to work for a regional newspaper, mostly covering local crime and weird stories that would never make national headlines. One of those stories led me to Highway 211, a desolate, two-lane road that runs along the edge of Navajo Nation territory. Reports had been coming in for months about sightings of a man walking the shoulder between mile markers 63 and 67. Same description every time. Male, mid-30s, no facial hair, dressed in black, no backpack, no flashlight, no phone. Just walking, no matter the time, no matter the weather. He never acknowledged passing cars, and no one had ever seen him reach the end of the road. The kicker, every driver who'd seen him reported the same thing. Afterward, their dreams would change. For 3 nights, always 3, they'd have vivid nightmares of being followed, not chased, not attacked, just watched, and in each of those dreams, the same figure appeared in the distance, not moving, just standing, silently, beside the road. I went to investigate. It was mid-November, cold and dry. I parked just past mile marker 62 and waited. The highway was dead silent, no traffic, no wind, just the distant crackle of dry brush shifting. Around 2:11 a.m., my car's interior light flickered, just for a second. Then I saw movement in my rearview mirror, a shaped walking. I got out of the car. What I saw didn't make sense. The man was exactly as described: black hoodie, jeans, pale skin. But his movement, it was wrong. It was like watching an animation with every few frames missing. He didn't limp or shuffle. He just teleported forward in tiny, unnatural jerks, covering more ground than he should have. Each time he flickered closer, the air around me got heavier, like I was underwater. I called out to him, no response. I snapped a photo with my phone. The screen then went black. The man stopped walking, about 30 feet away. He raised his head. That's when I noticed he didn't have eyes, just smooth, stretched skin, as if his face had been erased. I backed toward my car, heart pounding. The moment I closed the door, he vanished, not into the brush, not into the shadows. He was just gone. I didn't sleep that night. The first dream came the next evening. I was standing on the edge of a road I didn't recognize. The sky was the color of old ash. There was no sound, just a low hum beneath my feet. And in the distance, across the cracked asphalt, the man was there, facing me, UNMOVING. No face, no sound, just the faint sensation that he was staring. The second dream was worse, same road, but now it was darker. Fog had rolled in, This time, he was closer, maybe 20 feet away. Still not moving, but something had changed. His hands were twitching, like he was resisting the urge to reach out, or trying to hold something back. The third dream started with a sound, breathing, but not mine. It was ragged, slow, and wet like something struggling to inhale. I was standing inside my own bedroom. Everything was still. Too still. Then I saw movement at the window, not outside, inside. Inside, the man was standing in the corner, impossibly tall, his head nearly brushing the ceiling, still faceless, still watching. I woke up screaming, my throat raw, my sheets soaked. I moved out of my apartment 2 days later. But it didn't matter. He kept coming. Not every night, but enough always, in dreams, always closer. Sometimes I can feel him in the room before I fall asleep. Sometimes I wake up to the sound of slow breathing, only to find nothing there. Here's the worst part. After I published my article, I got an anonymous email, no subject, no signature, just 5 words. You weren't supposed to look. And attached to the email was a photo, the one I thought, never saved. That night, it showed the road, my car, the darkness, and right next to my driver's side window was the man, staring in. There's a rumor among late-night radio operators, ham radio hobbyists, dispatch workers, even truckers that somewhere around 3 a.m., if you tune just right, you can catch a broadcast not listed on any known frequency. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a call sign. It's not music, not weather updates, not even numbers like the Cold War stations. They call it Station Zero, and the people who've claimed to hear it never seemed quite the same afterward. I didn't believe any of that, at least not until I started monitoring shortwave frequencies during the graveyard shift at a local emergency dispatch center. My job wasn't glamorous, basically, babysitting silent frequencies and logging call activity during slow hours. One night, the usual static broke with a loud crack, followed by dead air. Then, a voice, but not like a DJ or dispatcher. This voice was quiet, muted, almost whispered. Even though it was broadcasting loud and clear, it said, "You are not where you think you are." Then silence. I checked every known database, CC logs, NOAA broadcasts, local law enforcement bands. There was no trace of any active transmission on that frequency at the time. It didn't match any licensed signal. When I told my supervisor, he just shook his head and said, "Don't chase it. You'll wish you didn't." That should have been my warning, but I didn't listen. I brought in my own radio equipment the next night, an old Yaesu transceiver that could sweep through nearly everything from 1.6 to 30 megahertz. Around 3:02 a.m., something shifted, not a sound, more like a pressure in the air. The room felt colder, though the thermostat hadn't changed. Then my receiver locked onto a new signal, one that hadn't existed moments before. It started with a slow, rhythmic tone, like a heart monitor, but distorted, glitching in and out. Then came the voice again. "You are hearing this because you've been heard." This time, I recorded it, but when I played it back, nothing, just static. Even though I watched the waveform save, the weirdest part, when I checked the timestamp of the recording, it said it was saved at 3:33 a.m., but I looked at the clock on the wall at the time. It was exactly 3:03, a 30-minute difference that never happened. Over the next few nights, the broadcast got clearer. Sometimes it played what sounded like breathing, slow, deep, mechanical. Other times it played strange voices, overlapping, repeating phrases backwards, or in fragmented Latin I couldn't translate. Once, it played a sound like a woman crying, but the longer you listened, the less human it sounded, like her mouth was stuck open and the sound was just spilling out. Then, the voice changed. It started saying things about me, where I was sitting, what I was wearing, even what I was thinking. "Don't move your hand. That door behind you is not locked. There's a shape just beyond your sight. It was never threatening, just ... observant, like it was narrating my reality from somewhere else. And the more I listened, the harder it became to tell what was real. One night I blacked out at my desk. When I came to, it was daylight. My supervisor found me slumped over, radio still crackling. He told me I'd been missing for 5 hours, not asleep, not logged, gone. Security footage showed me walking out the front door at 2:59 a.m. Then nothing, no exit, no re-entry, just a 5-hour blank. The next night was the last night. I listened. The voice came on right at 3:00. No static, no distortion, crystal clear. It said, "There are frequencies that were never meant to be heard." Then a long pause. "Now you are one of them." Every device in the dispatch center shut off. Monitors, lights, radios, all at once. The only thing that stayed on was the transceiver, and from it came the sound of my own voice, calling for help. I've never gone back to that job. I don't keep a radio in my home. I unplug my electronics at night, but sometimes around 3:00 a.m., my phone rings. No caller ID, just white noise on the other end, and beneath it, I swear I can still hear that voice, whispering, listening.